All right, here we go. This is our first practice choreography. It's a milestone for the show.
No, our first practice choreography is when I threw from the commentary desk to you interviewing an author. Yeah, and me being like, "What the fuck is happening?"
We should go back and re-edit that footage just as a funny video, because that is some funny pre-Old World stuff, I gotta say.
Welcome to the first 2025 Squarebase Show 2025. We're your hosts, and what an exciting new year it's gonna be.
Woo! New year, same us.
New year, new army. That's it. That's what it's gonna be.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. We should talk about that. But before we do anything, we want to say a special thank you to the Squarebase community for watching the shows. And it's going to be a really exciting. 2024 was thrilling. Launch of the Old World, a million arcane journals, armies, tournaments, so many things happening. Warhol becoming the standard for Old World in. That's pretty good. All led by Val Heffelfinger. Yeehaw. It was really sweet, actually. When I was running some events over Christmas, I was like, I was playing a Warhol yesterday. And I was like, that's cute. That's cute that it's become this thing. That's lovely. But 2025 is now upon us.
Wait till you find out about the internet, Rob. It'll blow your mind.
Not a fan. That's what I say.
Apparently there's a Discord that our patrons can be in. You should check it out.
I posted up some pictures over the recent times. Lovely. And then I ran away because there's too many people and it's scary.
There's a lot.
There's a lot. Hello, everybody. So 2025. Let's kind of wrap up Christmas and the New Year, though, bud. Did you have any time to get any hobby done, or was the tumult of the Christmas period quite a lot?
I actually. There was one day after Christmas, so it was, I guess, the day after Boxing Day. I had we had like one calm family day in between things. And I said to my wife, I need to play Warhammer. And she gave me the Spartan meme.
She didn't give you the Terminator thumb.
I don't often visualize my wife being melted in a vat of metal, but of slag. But no, it was more just go for it. So I went and played my guy Moose Green, Christian, who plays Beastman and always beats me with Beastman, and he again beat me with Beastman. But it was a lot of fun. I got to and because as I'm sure we'll touch on, I remain hobby locked or Old World locked to Greenskins. I ran Troll Horde because I decided that, you know what, being able to reroll regens on all kinds of stuff seems good. So I've just been running Troll Horde, which has been fun.
That's great. Yeah, I don't think you should have to. I think this is one of those really interesting things where, like, let me know in the comments below if you're one of these people who feels the same. Because one of my big problems with the Old World has been being able to commit to an army. Commit to like a project. And I think, even with your greenskins, just playing Troll Horde again, it's not a bad shout. You could be like being the Troll Horde guy facing off against various different threats. It definitely feels like the Old World is a game orientated around collections versus necessarily jumping around the units or armies that, maybe are strong or, something like that. So it definitely feels like, that's a better play. So you can just stick with the Troll Horde. Is it that you are worried that you're too singular in what you're playing?
I'm not worried about it. Yeah. It's just I'm lucky to have so many armies painted, ready to go. Like I could be running Tomb Kings right now. I could be running meta Tomb Kings. I have all the pieces. Never once put it on the table. I've gotten my vampire counts on the table, I think once. That was really fun. But for whatever reason, I just always go back to my safe space, which is playing with orcs and gobos. The Troll Horde list that I was running is not like it had very little to do with trolls. So I was having fun with that. And the version of it that I was running on Warhol in December, because I don't actually have any goblins with bows and arrows. I was running sort of a poison blob of savage orcs, which is a lot of fun. And TMPing them around the modified version. In this case, I was running entirely within, or whatever the heck we phrased it as on our FAQ. So yeah, so like, I don't know, I just go back to it. And as far as like hobby is concerned, I haven't done a ton of it. And the last hobby I did was really getting ready for the first ever TSN Arena Old World event way back in March.
Mm-hmm.
And that was incredible. But, you know, it took an event to really get me juiced up and wanted to build something for it. And that's what got my Black Orcs ready and all that kind of stuff. So it really takes an event, I think, to get me hobbying. Something to shoot for, you know?
Yeah, I think being goal oriented is super useful. That's basically what I did over the Christmas period, as well as running a bunch of old world events, which I'm sure we'll talk about. One of my goals was like, I have so many armies ready, so many things ready to rock, just like you, and with printers and time, like the time is actually what I'm poor at, but like I could do anything. And it is that running events all the time as well. I haven't seen every combination of army, but I've seen a lot. So I'm not like, I don't say to myself, so I printed a bunch of dwarfs last year and I was like, I'd like to play some dwarfs. And then immediately everyone was playing dwarfs. And then my excitement and enthusiasm for putting the dwarfs on the table just went a bit lower, because I was like, I just guess I'd be just another dwarf guy. As a sort of thing. And dwarfs are super popular here. Super popular.
Now, does that also poison your passion for evil dwarfs? Because we did get you one great story from 2024 was the return of your a good chunk of your Chaos Dwarf collection. So what's going on there? Is the love? Is the love dwindled? Are they not calling to you like you thought they might have?
No, that's not the case. I'm super excited about their return. I genuinely am. I just think I'm a little question mark around any of the legacy armies. Just to be 100% honest, like I'm a little question mark around them. I feel a little uncomfy putting any hobby and time into them when potentially they go. And I'm a Hashut guy through and through. So one of the things I was thinking is like, there's only a year left, and hobby, like, you know, you're in a position where you've got a lot of painted armies, which is great. And I'm sure many other people who are watching this are like, you know, committing to painting or even rebasing or even finalizing my army of choice is several hours to several weeks to several months worth of commitment. And do I really want to do that for an army that might go away when we get the second edition, you know, which we're kind of question mark guessing around January 2026. And not a second edition, more of like a 1.5 sort of a situation, or maybe this is this is the beta test. This is the other version. So yeah, that's kind of my hopes and dreams. So yeah, I was a bit like, I'm a bit perplexed. And also, this is one thing that did happen to me over the Christmas period, if you're interested. So I set myself a bunch of hobby goals, and I was like, right, I'm going to write the list that I am going to paint to play, and I've booked an event to play in February here, so I'm playing in February. And then I was writing lists, and I was writing all my warriors stuff down, and I was trying to write cavalry buses, and I was trying to do really fun stuff. And in every situation, I just couldn't defeat the enemy that was a dragon.
Yes.
And then shout out to Fraser. I know Fraser watches the show. No, Fraser, I'm not going to put every single one of my models into one unit. That was his suggestion, which I will talk about my games over Christmas, because I played a lot over Christmas. But he was like, "Oh, you just put every model in one unit," and I was like, "Because that sounds shit." Was my argument. So I tried. I've written down a bunch of hobby goals for the old world, but it's probably going to be focused around terrain and then a very slim Warriors of Chaos army.
Terrain is probably a good thing to be focused on as a purveyor of incredibly high quality events. I also am thinking about needing to expand my terrain stash, so I don't have to constantly get people to drive from Ottawa to run events. I think too, with those hobby goals and like what armies to play, I will say that like the sad state of infantry does also kind of like make me a little more reticent to commit to a different army.
Super great.
And so the way, and I think we've seen this presaged in SBOT. SBOT 1 was, I think, finding out a lot about just how people might play it the first time out. And then SBOT 2, we saw a reaction to the meta, dragons and things like that. And also in real life too, we saw the innovations with those really big poison blocks of shooting stuff. Dwarfs did a really big,
big static res blocks,
big static res blocks. We saw the orc story. Dwarves are very good at that, for example. Maximum sized unit is the new MSU. Yes. So I don't know if that's where the meta coalesces as a reaction. Then that's an interesting place for the game to be getting to. And I think kind of like, and maybe this is a topic for a future show. And the game is driven, I think, by aesthetics. Like this is like Warhammer in general. Aesthetics are a big part of it. How it looks, how it feels on the table. Old World, I think, looks and feels awesome on the table fundamentally, but not having those sort of like the middle class of infantry out there, and especially in event lists, is starting to maybe make me wonder if there's something that can be done. And hopefully, fingers crossed, whether it's with missions or with potentially errata or adjustments that they might or may not make in this next month and a bit, maybe we see something. But I would love to see something that just gives a little bit of hope to the rank and file in 2025. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, well, I think we should. Yeah, like this video at least is going to be a discussion about some stuff that's happened recently, and also some sort of thoughts about like where we'll be in the next year or so. Maybe that'll be a whole other show, but like at least there's some conversations around that. Yes, boss.
I have a question for you on the dragon point that haunted your dreams. What brand of dragon was it?
All of them, actually. So I played over the Wii. So I played. So since you've last seen us do like a square base show, I've obviously put the video up about the 3,000 point game event that I ran, and I'd love to talk to Val about like larger scale games. We'll talk about that in a moment. But over Christmas, so between Christmas and New Year, I always run one dayers, so people can just play and hang out, which is super fun. Some people don't have families, some people just want some time away. Really fun. And I ended up playing Spare Player twice. A special shout out to two different people, Michael and Fraser. I think they both want to show. So Michael, Teddy Bear, just such a nice guy. I had easily one of like the nicest games. It's quite clear, like he's just a really friendly dude, right? That just treated me like a bitch, right? it was amazing.
A true alpha.
Yeah, a true alpha. So I was just playing my like Tzeentch gunline list, right? Which itself has weaknesses, which I recognize, okay? And it does have the inability to deal with dragons, but that is the army that I hobbied last year, right? Because I did hobby a bunch of warriors, then it was quite clear that infantry, at the start of the edition, it was quite clear we were all like, infantry's quite bad, actually. Then I built a bunch of a bunch of like heavy cav, like chosen knights or knights, basically. And then it was quite clear that was really bad. And it's actually quite clear dragons are really good from the very first page read. That's what we very first discussed, right? I think maybe the first thing I ever said to you was, this thing is dumb.
Yeah. You keyed like when you first looked at the first army you wanted to play, which was Warriors of Chaos, you were like, I don't see why I wouldn't just build the best dragon I possibly can immediately.
Yes. And so anyway, I ended up with a Tzeentch gunline because at least it was kind of like interesting, and it has like a very big weakness. And Michael exploited that weakness, because the weakness is this: if you ever face against it again, what you do, especially my Tzeentch gunline, because it wasn't super optimized, there's still a hell cannon in there because that's there mainly to make my opponent laugh, because they love like when you play
good rigor list.
Yeah. It's a good rigor list. When you play with the hell cannon, they love it. Anyway, so Michael showed me his army. He was just running really sweet, actually. He was running a Chaos Dragon, but it was the one he'd painted when he was 8, which over the Christmas period, he'd gone to his parents' house and gone and got it. And he was like, I'm going to strip it and I'm going to change it around. But it was like, it was beautiful. That's how I describe it. And so we were talking, I was like, I think this will be a quite interesting game, actually. He was like, well, yeah. I was like, are you going to take your dragon, just immediately put it right in front of my army, or not? And he was like, I'm gonna. And I was like, well, handshake for you, sir.
Yeah.
And then the other game, which was super fun, was I played against Fraser. So this was, I think, New Year's Eve. And I had won 2 of my games over that time. It was only a one day. So this is my 3rd game. Fraser played Wood Elves, and he had a Wood Elf dragon. And there was this really beautiful moment where he had a bunch of, not Wild Riders, he had a bunch of Glade Riders behind a forest. And what he would do is keep popping out from behind the forest. He'd throw his poison javelins at my hell cannon, and then he'd pop them back, right?
Why pick on the hell cannon? Fuck you, man.
Exactly, I agree. Fuck you, Fraser.
What are you doing? Why? I mean, was there something else you could pick on? Or hell cannon just having a psychotic episode in the backfield? Let him be.
I need to just point out, sorry, that in between this, I think this was the game I played against. The event I played in was the very first of this string of 5 one-dayers that I did in a row. And then the last game, this game against Fraser was actually bookended. I've just realized it was game 1, event 1, and then it was game 3, event 5. Was my bookend. In the middle, when I wasn't spare playing, it was super busy. We had loads of people in, and I was like talking about my hobby goals, speaking to my friend Toby, and I was like, let's write down, and he was played Warriors before. We were like spitballing lists. I was like, right, what am I going to do? What would be cool? Let's try and think about the Warriors army, think what would be different, what people haven't done before, or even just let's make a cavalry bus work, because I think those cavalry models are sick, and I'd love to do it. He was like, right, let's do it. And you know when you're just having a conversation and you're losing every time, like I would be like, okay, I'm going to do this and I'll do the strike last story. He's like, yeah, but I'll just challenge and you'll die. And I was like, that's a really good point. I was like, oh, well, I'm going to take a bunch of Forsaken, right? Like literally 500 points of Forsaken. Then I'm going to charge in the Demon Prince. He's going to give a strike last story. I'm going to get poisoned. He's like, yeah, but I'll just challenge the Demon Prince. And then I was like, oh, fuck. So like this was a kind of like harrowing moment where like the attempt to try to build some cool models and armies didn't really work my way. Anyway, this last game, Fraser, as I said, kept popping these Glade Riders out. And as he kept doing it, I had to say to him at one point, I was like, Fraser, you're a massive C word. I was like, because this is doing nothing. Like, this is literally an exercise in futility, because your entire Wood Elf army is in the corner, and this dragon is soloing my whole army. Like, just soloing it. He's like, yeah, he is. And I was like, every pillar of fire, I was like, come on, get some 6s. Every blue fire, I was like, just a couple of 6s. And it didn't, and he just soloed the whole army. And he was a delight as I was getting progressively more and more like this. It just broke me mentally.
I would describe you as unhinged the day that I talked to you. Just reel down in your cups if you were a man who did that. It was not great. But also, a year in, the dragon is a known commodity out there. So finding ways to deal with the dragon.
Hell cannon is also not the answer, just in case you're wondering. Yeah, and there were
previously.
And as we went through the events, there were we did have giant poison blocks of goblins, big static combat res blocks. Like there were people. I saw Ed do a really clever thing where he charged a dragon into the static combat res block, but also a light cavalry unit that he charged in. But the light cavalry unit champion is the one that accepted the challenge, so that the dragon just went to town and just battered everything, which was super fun. It was nice seeing that as as a tactical play, which I thought was super cool, but it was on the side of the dragon. So anyway, that was my kind of Christmas experiences, and it just put me it didn't really put me down, because I've been in this position before. I think that's something I'd like to say. And it probably sounds really negative, and I'm sure there'll be some comments saying, it sounds like a shit game. And I think, especially because you and me have talked about this off air, there's definitely some massive changes that you could write, and you've done something really cool about that, that you could do to improve infantry. We've talked about heavy cavalry having 2 wounds, a bunch of stuff. You could just put the points up on them. But I've lived through Games Workshop games where stuff is too silly. And the answer really in that time has often been just hobby the stuff that you want to hobby, because normally it swings around. But that's pretty shit advice, genuinely, because sometimes it doesn't swing around. Like Like it's kind of an awkward situation because you want to be involved in the game, you want to be involved in doing the hobby, you want to play the models that you like, but recognizing that they're not necessarily even 5 out of 10 is actually quite disheartening.
There's just so many things here, like to talk about, because like again, a year in, people have probably picked up the game or are finally actually getting to a place where they can get all of that infantry they painted up because they just painted the army they wanted to paint onto the table, and now they're going to be coming to grips with what the game actually plays like. I think the first thing to say is that somehow, even in the state that Old World is in, with a lot of I think we've found that it has, you know, its issues. It's still fun. I think that is really, really key. The vibes are still good. I hope they were at your events. Sure,
really,
sounds like
really good, really good.
People are still able to go out, have a really good time, and I think the event meta, because I'm interested to hear that, you know, you're starting to see that, you know, that really big concentration into Death Stars of infantry happen. Things that have lots of combat res, usually poison, that kind of stuff as a way of fielding infantry. You're starting to see that on the tabletop. That's interesting to me. But like, yeah, we kind of know where the game's going. And I think for the majority of people out there, and actually this has really been highlighted to me by watching some of Mountain Miniatures videos, because he's been doing 1-year reviews of his original hot takes. And basically most of it is, I think he's actually got a pretty good grip on how the game goes if you were to play it out of the box. But the way they play it on their streams, I don't watch them a ton, but the way they play on their streams is how they want to play. So they tend to play with lots of infantry, even if infantry isn't the best choice. I think you see in the discourse on Facebook that a lot of people are like, what are you talking about? Infantry sucks. Just make it so that everyone brings infantry and then it's just fine. If everyone has crappy infantry, then it's no big deal. So I think really the way the game is set up right now is to be played how you want to play it in your group. And in that way, people can handle the differences in power level just fine. And the game plays and it works just fine. I think that's how it was play tested, to be quite frank. I don't think there was a unit of infantry over 25 play tested. You know, like it strikes me that this game has been calibrated to a version that is not necessarily represented by the rules that it has, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And so really the only area that I think for me that is what I worry a little bit about is just when you're playing in those heads up games, when you're playing, when you go to an event, when you go to your local club night, and you don't necessarily have the same expectations as to what the game should play and look like. And now we get into taboos, right? Like, so now we're going to get into like, oh, this guy's OP, or like this guy's a power gamer because he brought X, which is the most toxic way a game can go. And I think that's kind of what eventually undermined things like what I thought was an amazing edition, like 8th edition fantasy. I thought was awesome. It had lots of quality of life improvements, but it had all of these things in it. These things in it that I've always said you could have made 8th edition a game that was much more agreeable to more people with like 10 sentences, right? I really fundamentally believe that. Games Workshop never did it. The community never really did it. And so you had a lot of people who were fine with playing 8th edition fantasy with all of its insaneness. Were the last ones standing. Those were the people who were playing, but they weren't the majority of people who wish they could be playing Warhammer, right? Mm-hmm. So we're at a crossroads, I think, which is, are there different ways to maybe patch the game? Maybe from a community perspective, maybe that's something I might argue for in the future. Or are we going to see Games Workshop try and make some adjustments to its rules in the next month or so? We really do believe there might be a match play pack or a tournament pack coming out with missions and stuff. Maybe that does something. But as someone who like just loves the community, loves this game, loves all the vibes that we've got, I just don't want to see dropouts because it's not meeting their ludonarrative expectations, or even just maybe their gaming expectations. Maybe people don't want to have to figure out these things, like how maybe people who want to play infantry don't want to have to run it in a brick of 100. You know, maybe people don't want to have to only think about how do they deal with the dragon. So that's where I'm at, and we'll see where that goes.
I think that's super fair. I think that is absolutely the kind of takeaway. And shout out to Fraser, by the way. I didn't know if I was implicit enough. My final game, he was a treasure as I was getting more and more in my cups about this to the point where I even set up a WhatsApp group, call it like, and it's just a WhatsApp group where I now just find dragons that are playing on tables, and I take a picture of me swearing at them and upload it to the WhatsApp group. It's pretty fun. But obviously, like childish behavior, but very, I think funny. But well, the point. Go on.
And sorry, and just to underscore something, I also want to, in fairness to JTY, who we haven't shouted out in a long time, who we believe to be the main developer of this game. I think this is not by accident. I mean, he said it in print. You know, dragons are supposed to be powerful, right? Like, so like the 50% character allowance, very much on purpose. You know, like these guys being able to do what they do is on purpose. It's built into the game. It's just, you know, from that, like, from the perspective of like a competitive game, is it a game worth playing? Are people still engaged with it? I think the answer seems to be yes. But, you know, I just want to make sure that stays that way. And if maybe just creating subgroups where you just vent about how much you hate dragons, maybe that's the solution.
I'd also like to point out that the mega blocks as well are also probably as much of a problem, right? Like genuinely, like the mega block of X with all the characters in that just basically, you know, unless you kill the entire unit, you're giving no points up. It's like a points denial block. It's also a big problem. So then I kind of walked away from those little one-dayer events, and I was like, okay, hobby goals, what we want to do, and then like literally like Whiplash. I ran the 3,000 point event the other day here, so it's 24 people, so we just sold out for us. So sold out. We had a bunch of players. It was really fun, and I was like, maybe the game should be more points. Like, now let me give you some context for this, and obviously, like, also maybe it shouldn't be, but some context for this conversation at least is I was like, wow, and people really committed to it. They brought all their infantry. And I know Val sent me a message like, don't be fooled. People are just bringing the stuff they got painted. Eventually they'll bring 3 dragons. And shout out to Stephen, who also brought 3 dragons to the event. But also, you can still run 3 dragons at 2K. So, and I had a bunch of the Polish guys message me. They were like, that's all we're doing in Poland. We're just running 3 dragons. I was like, of course you are. You're best gamers in the world.
Of course.
Of course. But they also, the 3 dragon list didn't win. That's important. But more people could have taken 3 dragons. But it was a really fun like thing to see on the table. The game looked better. Now, did the game look better because you've got more points? Of course, like you said, you've seen those infantry blocks, so it looked more like the Warhammer I used to know, which is a really fair point. But also, in my post-analysis, I was thinking about this a lot. I was like, I would say a level 4 wizard is pretty mandatory, like in the game. I think you'd agree with that. Then, probably, the most tooled up fighty thing that you can build is normally a character on a thing, because you can have magic items and other stuff. And then maybe you're doing a BSB. People don't generally tend to take BSBs, but like maybe you are. And immediately like, okay, that's close to some amount of points, 600 to 1,000 points I'm spending. And then I've got to take my core. That's like, you actually don't get a lot of allotment for the toys in the game. And then 2,000
points.
2,000 points.
This is how they wound up at 2,400, 2,500. 100%.
And I kind of walked away from it, and I was like, I think maybe this is better. Now, obviously, it's only the one event, and obviously, just that change up might have been something that's impactful, and something that's really different to 8th edition Warhammer Fantasy Battle, which I'm so happy about, is we are not using one yearly event to decide how we feel about the game. Like, whereas the one mega event, like the South Coast GT or something, it's like, that's cool. This thing won, so that thing is broken. Like, because I've quite often run events where there've been too many dwarfs, or for some reason, like 4 vampire count players, and you're like, vampire count seem really strong this week. And obviously, when I do the Age of Sigmar stuff, that week-on-week story really you can really pick out kind of like headlines if you want to, but actually there's a really consistent storyline and kind of like a conversation about what's good and what not good and what's not good if you tune in every week sort of thing. So I'm like, maybe my feelings are just because that week everyone decided to take a bunch of cool big infantry stuff, but then in 3 months' time, if it was all 3,000 points, it would just be tables of dragons or unkillable blocks. Shout out to the guy Matthew who brought 56 Chaos Warriors in a block.
Oh man, tell that story.
56 Chaos Warriors in a block with 2 or 3 level 4s. I think it was 2 level 4s, a Chaos Lord, maybe also a BSB, and then 2 units of Dragon Ogres. So
I hope
it
he
was,
had a BSB.
It was like 2,500. No, he did have a BSB, but you can't use BSB against terror checks. Did you know that? You do know that?
I did not know that.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, either way, big block, and basically he was tabling everybody. Well, no, he was never losing a point because you would try to fight the mega block would never die. 2 units of 3 Dragon Ogres, which are like, I think that's like 180 points. So then you're talking 2.5k in 1 block, which I saw charged at the end by 2 units of Pegasus Knights, the Green Knight, and also maybe like a unit of Grail Knights, and that the block won. Like it was surrounded.
Yeah.
But anyway, it did lose a game because it got terror checked off the board.
Yes. The most Warhammer shit ever. That is so Warhammer. I love that. To be clear, that giant block failed a leadership test. Maybe, would have just been 1 and ran off the board. Just such a Warhammer moment. I love that so much.
So, but the thing was, it felt like there was loads of cool armies. Like Kev had his great Skaven army, which one coolest army and stuff. And I've done an event review about that. Anyway, so my question to you is larger point games. I think you're going to throw some cold water on the Robbo. They'll just take all the dragons or whatever. But like, what do you think?
What do I think? Larger point games. I'm not completely closed off to it. Again, I got the toys. I could play in them. I like 2,000 points. Let's start with why I like 2,000 points. It's more accessible immediately. So the bar to get on the table is lower. And again, we're only a year in. People take that long to paint up an army, right? Like
they do.
So like that's one thing. I think for anyone like us, certainly like me, I should say, I could field a 4,000 point army with a lot of my collections, right? So like that's not really the thing. At 2,400, 2,500, 3,000 is very interesting because you actually tip into that. You get an extra of the 1 per 1,000 rule. Did you keep the rule of 3 and 6?
I know. I used the Warhammer system or the Warhammer World system, which was unless otherwise stated, then 3.
Oh wow. Okay, so you use that. That's okay.
Mainly because the
idea core was limited to 3.
Yeah, the reason for that was though is it was 3,000 points. I was like, you know what, like let's just have a fun time, basically. And then and people like it sold out like the first day I put the tickets up. So obviously people were really excited, and I was like, we'll just see some big stuff, but. What we ended up seeing was, I don't think we saw anything apart from that big block and maybe the triple dragon list. I don't think we saw anything that was like out and out bananas. Like, and Jack's list that won had 3 cannons, 3 hellblasters, but he didn't go, right, I'm going to go get 6 cannons.
Yeah.
So he didn't do that. So I think people just enjoyed putting a bunch of stuff on the board and rolling it around. So I
2 hell chickens.
Yeah, I wanted to free it up basically.
So I guess my thing is, one, your original, I think what you were getting at too is the army lists are written in a lot of cases where some of the most powerful choices are per army, right? So like, and that was one of the earliest debates about being 1999 points would restrict some of those lower tier choices down a bit more, and also restrict some of the level 4 options a bit more. But I do think that ultimately, if we did go up in points to, mid 2000s, let's say, as a standard, then and it stayed at 50% characters, that you're just going to see an exacerbated version of what we have right now. Not necessarily. I think you would rapidly find out whether or not you're getting any efficiency out of those extra units of whatever infantry or whatever. You're going to see more of what is good out of the special and rare slots, and that's probably going to be I would just wager some more cavalry. And things to that effect. I don't necessarily know that it solves. I think honestly, I really want to shout out here that this game, and this is the way I felt about 8th edition. I know I sound like a broke record. This game is really close. I think that in general, one of the reasons why you don't see one army being derided as the most OP thing, or like this is the thing that's unbeatable or whatever, is that every army has access, I think, generally speaking, to similar things, and with different flavors, enough flavor that they all feel distinct, but that no one is unable to participate in any of the things that are good for the most part. I mean, that may be too much of a statement, but it's pretty close, especially amongst the core factions. People have a powerful character on a mount. People have good units that can deal damage. Like, there are tools in the box. And so to me, I think really what if there is a quote problem at all, it's in the core rules, the way that the game actually works and what rewards you get for the points that you spend. And that's where I think that if there's tinkering, that's where I would like to see it. Because to me, I see a future where, we have, enough events going on and we can see who the underperformers are. And rather than saying everyone gets 2,400 points, I think one of the best ways you can handicap a game or give benefits to an underperforming faction is to give points to an underperforming faction. So if we say 2,000 is the bar, then the people who get to bring bigger than 2,000 points, I think, should be the underperformers, like ogres. I think tomorrow we could say ogres get 2,200 points. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think Skaven could probably come up with 3,000, and I think that's where that'd be a fun way. And I think a more constructive way to bring more points to the game rather than make everyone just bring more of the good stuff.
Well, so I would say that I feel like so number one, I was super excited about this. This is important. After the kind of like getting absolutely double fisted by dragons, when I saw these tables, I was super excited, and I'm still very, very excited about this because I feel like list writing especially very much truncates you into already predetermined, like 1,000 points, maybe even a little, maybe even more. So at what point, being able to extend it out, it also meant the power pieces were less powerful, because when you're able to apply 500 points of dragon,
you only have 6 turns.
Yeah.
How much could a dragon eat in 6 turns, right?
Exactly. Well, specifically, yes. If it can only eat X, but that's a percentage of 2,000, then it'll be a smaller percentage of 3,000, right?
Yeah,
or 2,000 or 2,400. But you also have slightly more tools. You can, like, if you can only put 2,000 points into a 500 point dragon, I keep using it as an example, but then now I can bring 2,400, 2,600, 2,800 into that. Is that enough to then like smooth that curve? And it really did kind of get me super excited about like saying to myself, that is a really good point, because some games, Age of Sigmar scales quite badly. Like, it definitely scales badly down because there's a lot of recursion, not a lot of summoning. There used to be a lot of summoning. There's a lot of recursion. So that scales down quite badly. It also kind of, because there was 2 people playing with vampire counts as well. I wouldn't say it smoothed off the recursion, but it definitely helped. When they were bringing back like a big unit, you're like, or half a big unit, you're like, okay, that's fine. Like, that's less of a percent of how much you were bringing back than the smaller amount of points that we were playing. So all of these kind of problem pieces did look, and there were some other problems as well, but it did look a little smoother at that level. Now, this is one instance, one event, but I was I was really on it at this event. I kept going around to the tables. I was like, what's happening? How you doing? Game 1 massively overran. And then games 2, 3.
But actually, this is a really good question. Timing of rounds. Like, did you keep your round times? I know you went to 5 games rather than 4. So did you keep your round times the same, or did you extend a little bit?
I kept the round times the same, and game 1, everyone massively overran. But games 2, 3, 4, 5, they leveled out, and people were finishing their games in the normal amount of time. So that was at 3,000 points. Probably, if you wanted people to have like a chill time and enjoy themselves, I would come down to some amount. And I think the argument is between 2,400 because it's easy for math. 2,800, I don't know. I think maybe 400 isn't quite enough, is what I would say. But I personally was super excited about it, and like it kind of like it turned me around. And while I plan on doing another event, like probably towards the like middle of the year. At like a similar points value, and all the events that I'm currently doing are 2,000 points. It did make me really think to myself. I was like, like for SBot, like your Nerex SBot, I would love to talk to you about the points being higher, just so again, like maybe a wider community of people than the 24 people playing at my event can say to themselves, I wonder what this does look like. It adds because I think that, and it's also one of the really beautiful things about the old world. I kind of said to myself, I was like, do you know what? Maybe this does scale well, or scale linearly, or like better at a certain point. And I was genuinely really interested in it. So yeah, like that was a recent thing, and going forward, it's definitely it's going to be very conscious to myself. I'm going to say to myself, I think that it's not something I'm going to be like, that was a fun, like with the rivers, I was like, that was fun. Maybe I'll do another one. With this, I'm like, is this the future of the game? Question mark. Like, and I'm sure people will say yes or no, but it's definitely worth a conversation. I think that's kind of my takeaway.
Yeah. And I think the things that you can like, actually, this is a whole video that because it got interrupted by Christmas, but we have a ton of like sort of feedback data from the most recent SBOT. I did a post SBOT survey, and it'd be really interesting for us to do a show on just what players told us about things like format and stuff like that, because I think point size is definitely something that a TO can tinker with 100%. And same thing with missions. The thing that stuck out in my head was there is almost unanimous, this blew my mind, community support for TOs doing whatever they want with missions, like straight up, right? So like that, like there are definitely taboos, like things that seem to be a bridge too far as like whether you're doing army comp or rules adjustments or even how you answer an FAQ. Some things just rub people the wrong way. One thing that does not, obviously, how many points you run necessarily. And the second one, missions. Missions are also like absolutely something that are free reign to do, which would also have significant change, I think, to how armies are built to play those missions, and maybe something that's been untapped, certainly by us. We've been playing a straight up kill point game, for the entire first year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a bunch of thoughts that I'd love to bring to the table if we talk about like holding objectives or doing things like that, which personally for me, I think is an inelegant solution. But like that's which is good because everyone can have different opinions on it, which is really cool. Like it's my opinion, not a fact. Yeah. Also,
one other thing I really, really want to hit here, and it's something that I think you've been doing like since Jump, which is, I think from like the advanced perspective of AOS and 40K tournament goers and event goers, there was always this thing that I don't know if it was as big a deal in AOS, but in 40K it always was this idea of like, we really want everyone to be playing the same game, right? We want everyone to have the same missions and have the same, so that way we can see like truly how everything's going and all that kind of stuff. I do not give a shit about that in Old World. I straight up do not give a shit about everyone playing the same format. I am not upset about anyone who's running an event. If the people who are going to that event are excited for it and want to play want to play some wacky missions, want to play with some different rules, want to like make some restrictions, whatever, it doesn't matter. We are in a growth phase where what I think as a community need to be focused on is people playing the game and enjoying it however they can, right? Like there's so much space out there to do whatever the fuck you want. Make your castle event, I'll fly out. So like and I think that's I think that is a cool thing, and I think the more that I love the innovation of formats there. SBOT for me is more of a, if there was a way to see what would this game look like if it was played at the tier of an AOS or a 40K? You know what I mean? Like if very good players are trying as hard as they can with the rules, what does the game look like? It still holds together, but it becomes a bit of a mutant form, as it always will, right? But I think that like locally, like when we did that things we wish were different in Old World back in the summer, on those ideas, I know that there are tournaments that were run, one dayers or whatever, using like 2 wound cavalry. Like that happened, right? Like, so like people can just innovate on this stuff. And honestly, because we're all sort of learning these rules as we go, can show up to an event and roll with whatever that punch is, roll with whatever that change up is. I really think that the key for me and in 2025 is just finding ways that are appealing for people to play. And if that's out of the rule book, awesome. There's going to be options for that. If it's with modifications, awesome. There's going to be different ways that people approach changing the game. And I don't think we as a community need to be so vicious about those innovations or changes. You just vote with going to the events that you think you want to go to or playing the way you want to play. I think that's totally cool.
I'm super on board with that, which has been the point, right? Like, I've been running events that have been like, this is what we is. It's also good for like the conversation, right? Like, so high elves are going to come out and we'd be like, okay, like Dragon Prince is losing Impetuous, but they still keep being 1 wound, right? Whereas like, in a heavy cavalry get 2 wounds format, these are super interesting and fun. In a 1 wound format, maybe it's not as exciting. And different formats really are fun. Having a standard is really nice because it lets you branch out. And I've been a big advocate for this forever. Like people like, you do not ever have to follow any of the rules. It's so important to say. And I agree with you. I'd like to say I absolutely support your feelings that I don't care that if it's not all played the same. I think when it gets to the structure of being OTT, like we saw very early Old World, the game hadn't been out yet and there was already like 1 million restrictions on some event. I was like, you can maybe calm down a little bit, I reckon, at that point. But I think as the game goes on and things happen, but I'm also really excited that and hopeful that this is not the Warhammer Fantasy Battle of yesteryear, that this isn't a game that Games Workshop leave and do nothing with. I do hope that this is something that we maybe see some balance patches, or we see some sort of like, because I don't even necessarily need external balance patches. I do, and what I mean by that is one army being better so that it can play against another army. I'm more bothered about internal balance issues. Like if I'm always for, like we talked about the Dragon Slayer model that just came out. If he's rubbish, why is he rubbish? Like I don't. It's not why. Like, do I need him to beat, wood elves? That's not the conversation I want. It's like, why have I not chosen him in my army? That's a balance I would like to be looked at. You know what I mean? I would like all of the options in whatever book that I love or whatever army I love to have a good argument for making it to the tabletop, because that's the most exciting for me as a hobbyist.
Yeah.
That's definitely what I'd like to say.
You don't feel, we were joking about this when like when we do our deep dives, there's lots of units out there that aren't the best in slot, aren't the best choice, but they're not punishing you for taking them. They're just not the absolute best choice. But there's lots of stuff, and I think this comes down to core rules. There's lots of stuff that just, you'll feel bad if you use it. And that to me is that to me feels more like meta game balance than internal balance necessarily. But like when you're talking about something like a dragon, especially like a ridden dragon, and I've been really thinking about this, like really, really hard. Like what can be done to retain powerful dragons? Because again, 8th edition was one of my favorite things. You didn't see them because they were just hunted they were hunted to extinction due to how mounted characters worked, and also because of the power of things that could kill them, both spells and cannons and all kinds of stuff. So there's reasons why dragons just didn't exist. I love a world, and this is still one of my things that I love about Old World, where like monsters are there and they're monsters, right? But there's probably a tier below that could make it so that they're not so bloody powerful, but still very powerful, right? And then there's also, like, if I'm looking at points, what is a Chaos Lord on a dragon actually worth? You know what I mean? Like if you were to adjust these points so that like a 2-up armor save, toughness 6, 10 wound thing is reflected correctly, with a ward save and maybe regen, I'm not even sure, is actually reflected in its points, what would that look like? Would that be 1,000 points?
It's a Tomb Scorpion situation, right? Like, you look at some other monsters and you're like, the Tomb Scorpion is very cheap and is in all of the lists because it's very, very cheap. Like, and then you compare him to other monsters, you're like, you're not a Tomb Scorpion yet. You are 3 times the price of that Tomb Scorpion, and I'm confused by your existence. Like,
yes.
But I agree with you. I think you could do a points adjustment. I think the conversation about the dragons being powerful is a really good one, because, like, actually, very much like Imperial Knights or God characters in Age of Sigmar, should they really exist in, like, I think Old World maybe has a scale issue, ignoring the giant hands. I more mean like the difference between a man and a dragon is so severe. Can that be really reflected in a D6, like, or along that points level? And I feel like
it used to be. Sorry to interrupt you there. Like, but you triggered something that when I went from 40K to fantasy, I thought that the scaling of like the fact that like toughness 3 is such a genuinely like real benchmark in Old World, and things scale above and below that. I felt like things were just like achievable to kill. Like things felt right, like scale wise. I think the issue that Old World has versus maybe some of its predecessors is the fact that you have invulnerability, right? Like, is the fact that you have layered saves, up to 3 of them, that you can do nothing about. And armor and AP is harder to come by. So like, if you have a 2-up monster, that's a very different thing than a 4-up monster. A 4-up, like, who's really that upset about Necrosphinxes right now? You know what I mean? Like, like they're very good, but they're 6 wounds, and they're not rolling a 2-up and have 2 other saves after that necessarily. 2 other good saves after that. So like that to me, like, it's the invulnerability of those mounted characters that I think make them somewhat feel bad.
Yeah, very much so. But I also think there should just be a lot more points. I think that's the real simple answer, like a good points readjustment. So a really exciting 2025 where the conversation, like, I ended 2024 being like, I'm being dick punched by the things I said were a problem in January 2024. I started 2025 like, do you know what? Maybe we've just blown the bloody doors off, and maybe the world is completely different. There's potentially a mission pack coming from Games Workshop. There's the scope to do comp packs or patches, etc. On games. There's the points. There's the scope for points being different. There's a scope for missions being different, and actually all that while getting new minis, high elves, wood elves, potentially Cathay, and then leading into a new edition. That's actually a super exciting year 2 for the Old World, in my opinion, both as a hobbyist. So, I kind of ended absolutely down in the dumps and actually immediately shot back up. And I think that that's a great place. Like, I'm really happy that we're going to be getting to making videos, making content, and being a part of that game system for the next year, because actually going to be pretty brilliant, I reckon. And that's cool.
Yeah, it's going to keep being fun. And again, I mean, as it is, I still think it's fun. And that's why I show up here every week. And that's why I love chatting about it, in the comments and online and on Discord and all that kind of stuff. And I think too, like, it's a game, right? So like, there's no reason why, we need to feel like when we're overwhelmed by these things, we don't have to feel like we're victims. We just got to find ways to play the game that appeals to how we are. Because there's lots of folks out there too who just love finding the best things and running the best things, at that competitive tier, but not everyone's at that tippy top tier. And so finding ways for people to enjoy it. Maybe it's larger points. Maybe it's making a patch. Maybe it's just waiting, and maybe Games Workshop addresses some of these key concerns. Whatever it is, I think ultimately building your toys, looking at these sick armies on the table is still very thrilling, very fulfilling. And I too am looking forward to 2025, come what may.
Well, and especially enjoying and excited about bringing more content and a bunch of good stuff to you viewers at home. So I hope you enjoy it. And a special thank you to the Squarebase Patreon community who are going to help us get even further with that, which is cool. After this show today, I'm starting to edit down my first, hopefully, fingers crossed, I'm going to start editing down my first tabletop of 10 minutes for the old world.
Oh, my!
Gonna start. Well, I'm gonna start transferring the files. We'll see how that shapes up.
I mean, baby step. With a journey of 1,000 steps starts with one. My friend Rob. So you got this.
This is fun. Which would be a new format and super cool, especially because obviously we could start showcasing games, and they're all 3,000 point games as well. So it'll be a kind of fun inclusion for that stuff. So it's cool. Thank you to everyone. I hope you are excited as well. Let us know in the comments below what hobby you guys are going to get up to over the next year. What are you planning? What are you going to do? You said you're going to do high elves. Is that a commitment or
I don't know. I just threw that out there. I don't have a paint. I have a bunch of high elf models, but it's the least painted that I've got. And I love the Sea Guard. So like if the Sea Guard get as we assume evocative cool rules, then yeah, I could be in on that. And also a big old brick of Sea Guard archers sounds like it might work. Who knows?
Oh, good luck. I hope it does. I hope it does. Anyway, thanks everyone for listening. I hope you're well. Stay safe. See you soon. Bye.